I'm going to try to feed some questions in here, and then we're going to open it up the last 10 or 15 minutes for an open dialogue to figure out how we could take this tool and use it to go out to business owners. So with that, Angela, thank you very much, and give us what we came to hear today. What's it? What the heck is an EOP, and how does it work?
Thank you so much for the introduction there, Michael. So I do want to talk about mainly EOT. You'll see something pop up about ESOP, but this talk really is about employee ownership trusts. Legacy Exit Partners is something that I started 2 years ago. Mainly because I spent too much time on the buy side helping people understand the process of buying. And then I realized after so many calls that it was the sellers that needed help and not the buyers. It's really important that we get them exit ready and that advisors know how to get them exit ready. We want to show you how what that exit would look like through various different options before they call a broker. Brian, I know that we had a chat just recently. You're a broker, and some of the problems that you come up against. So the idea, we'll certainly go into some of those things, Brian, and you're aware of what those problems are. But I want to help advisors today understand to spot when a client's actually heading toward an unprepared exit and what that looks like, because it can get very expensive. They'll leave a lot of money on the table by not being prepared. But I also want to share some documents at the end as well, which obviously we can talk about, just so that you can speak credibly about the multiple exit options that are going to be available. And then you can become the advisor that clients consult first before going to brokers, before legal structuring, before decisions are locked in. Obviously, it depends on the size of the business as to whether or not employee ownership trust is right for them. This is a little bit of information about me. Obviously, Michael's just done an introduction, so I'm just going to get straight into the slides. First of all, this is the path that most owners take. The owner will go usually straight to a broker. They have the idea that just because it's time to sell the business, the first person that they need to call is a broker. What the broker is going to do is going to get a valuation of the business, and he's going to take it to the market, whether it's through bizbuysell.com, businessesforsale.com, bizquest.com. There's plenty of other places out there, and maybe they've got their own way as well of being able to get out to their own network on what they're going to do for them. They then look for the buyers, and then obviously the longer that business is on the market, and it can be on the market for a long time for all sorts of reasons, but the longer it's on, the more pressure it will end up under. And this is when buyers start to discount the deal. Most of those businesses still don't sell. So what actually happens is one of the things that Michael said earlier is that 80% of businesses never sell. Many quietly close instead, don't even go to a broker. That's really sad, because there's some very successful, healthy, great cash flowing businesses out there, but the owner's just grown to the point of being exhausted. And then the value drops when the time runs out. So as it says at the bottom, not planning is the most expensive decision, because this is where they're leaving most of the money on the table. They're usually spending all their time putting out fires. So where owners actually lose the most is entering the market too early. When I say that, it basically means that they put the business on the market before they've even got any processes in place. I've met so many business owners that don't know what a CRM is. They don't know what a project management system is. And if you're going to put it on the market before you're even prepared, then that's definitely too early. And obviously paying for the wrong advice as well. We know that there are lots of bad brokers out there. There are a few really good ones. We've got Brian in here. He's a good broker. He's been at it a long time and knows what he's doing. Obviously, it's about structuring before understanding, so that we don't have them losing the value of what's in the business, because you don't lose the money on the actual deal. You do actually lose it before it by not being prepared. So exit readiness does change everything. Most businesses are not exit ready, as I've just explained, and the reasons why. Most of the problems aren't really visible to an owner until it's too late. Most decisions happen under pressure when they're so desperate to sell and exhausted that it just fails to go through. So the exit
If I
doesn't
could jump,
actually,
if I could jump in, Angela, one of the things that I really
yeah,
like about this, and most people don't think about this, is what happens when decisions happen under pressure. You know, being exit ready, I can tell you a quick war story. I'll keep it under 30 seconds, but I remember 2006, 7, 8, and 9. Lots of money was on the table. A lot of people had offers to exit on a favorable basis. There was nothing wrong with the offer they were given, but they felt they were too young. Quote, they weren't personally ready to move on to something else. And then in 2009, 2010, 2011, these business owners are still calling us. When I had my firm Business Exit Planners with my CPA and my attorney, they kept calling us and we're like, we're sorry, you miss that. You may need to wait another 5 to 10 years when it comes around again. So being exit ready isn't because you intend on exiting, it's so that when the market shows up and says they're interested in you, you are ready. That's the best way to keep the pressure from piling on you as a business owner, is addressing and attacking this early, figuring out all of these components of making your business repeatable and then sustainable so that business owner can leave 2, 3, 4 weeks at a time. I wanted to interject. If there's some questions that are coming from this, please put them in the chat. Go ahead, Angela.
no problem. Thank you very much for sharing the story there, Michael. I just want to explain that there is another way when it comes to selling a business, because not every exit needs a buyer. Now, it sounds like a strange thing to say, because obviously every business has to be sold to a buyer somewhere. But the fact is that not every transition needs to have a listing, because the ownership can stay internal. In other words, you don't have to sell to an outside buyer. Here's some of the common exits in how you can sell a business. I'm not going to go into detail on this particular slide, but I do have some information at the end where I can share all of these different options with a little bit more information about them. Now, an employee ownership trust is one option, and I'm not suggesting that it's right for every client, but I do feel it deserves to be understood alongside, the other succession strategies that are out there. The simplest way to describe it is that it's a trust, that a trust buys the company, and the employees don't have to fund this deal themselves. And the ownership is held collectively in the trust until the owner chooses to retire. Now, it's not a brand new idea, as Michael explained earlier. It's fairly new to the US. It's only arrived in 2014. Most advisors and brokers in this room have probably never had a client that has raised this before. And that's simply because nobody's actually shown them this option yet. Even the bankers that I've already spoken to, people that I know quite well, have never heard of an EOT. And that's exactly the gap that I actually want to close today. It's not a retirement plan. Without knowing what an EOT actually is, it's hard to see how it differs from the ownership structures that you already know about. And my goal today isn't to sell you on it. It's to make it just another informed option so that you can raise it with a client when it's appropriate. There's no individual share accounts. There's no employee buy-ins required or expected. But the structure is actually designed, it's not inherited.
That's a very important part. And I know you and I have had hours of conversation about design, and I don't know that people completely understand that. I know you have some slides that you're going to share to help us get a real handle on what you mean by design. The fact that there's no individual share accounts, the fact that the business owner has the ability to really take a magic wand and say, I want this to happen. And literally within the EOT framework, there are ways of doing this. I think the other thing that's really important is that people go out and start talking about this. They're going to find the CPAs, the bankers, and the attorneys are not necessarily familiar with this. Even though it's been around over 10 years, it's not a topic that's brought up regularly. And there's a handful of people in the country who are uh, up to speed on this. And so Angela is one of the people from an educational standpoint you're going to want to talk to because she has relationships with those firms that are specialized in this and can probably help move this along. Angela?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Michael. There are two very different paths. Most of you may have heard of an ESOP. If you haven't, I'd be happy to explain that another time because they're very complex. They are regulated. There are multiple firms involved, regulatory complexity, and individual share accounts. One is a retirement plan. The other is not. It's an ownership and governance structure. And that's the difference that matters most because there's fewer moving parts with an EOP. They're much more flexible resolution. There is no ERISA or US Department of Labor involved in these, and we can custom design them to fit what the owner's actually looking to do. As Michael said earlier, they're really popular in the UK for a reason. But as we said earlier, the US didn't adopt them until 2014. The reason that I really love this model so much is because they can be structured and closed in as little as 90 days. And that's never going to happen with an ESOP. And with an EOT, the owner gets to have a say in how he wants this transition to work for him. I find it really exciting that an owner can design his exit with the help of his advisor, by looking at ways that they can fix leaks. I don't know if Ted's in the room today, but Ted Frangos loves fixing leaks in people's businesses, which is awesome. But I want to talk about structure before the sale. It's about the control.
Yes. And this slide is really, 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 really important. And if you look at this, it's built a certain way. And as you and I spent about a half hour digging deep in this slide, this fact of control, this is probably one of the few places where you literally can sit with a business owner and say, tell me exactly what you want to have happen. And there's a high probability of being able to get to yes to them through control. Angela, do you have any stories that you could maybe give us in a minute or two about some of the control or structure issues that may be unique to this that you've seen happen that are not happening in other options?
Well, the reason that I like the EOT so much is because the owner still has a say right from the beginning. One common misconception is that employees have to personally buy the company first of all, and funding can work differently, and that broadens the conversation. But just to give you an idea of a story of a deal that I got closed. Well, I didn't close it. Obviously, the lawyers and the trustees actually do that, but the business owner came to me wanting a certain amount of money for his business, and I could not see from the numbers how we were going to get that value. I gave him some tips of some things that he needed to do before he puts it on the market. He was willing to work on that for a year, and we got him an extra $1 million, which he was happy about, but it still wasn't reaching the number that he wanted. That deal actually went through an ESOP, not an EOT. It was closed successfully, and yes, he did get more money for the business. But we found out at the time I wasn't involved in employee ownerships. But once I learned a lot more about that structure and how much the owner was able to have some control, but nowhere near as much control when I compared it with an EOT, I was actually quite shocked at the differences. So
could you talk? Could you tell us a little bit about the timing and how that affects value, and then why this particular slide is in this particular order, and why you get to decide the best outcome before the deal even exists?
Yeah, sure. Control comes from ownership. As long as your client still owns the business, every option is still on the table. The moment that they sign with a broker or bring in outside capital, so some of that control actually transfers away, whether they like it or not, to be fair. But the actual structure affects the outcome, whether it's an EOT, an ESOP, sale to co-owners, or an outright sale to a third party. The structure doesn't just change how they exit, it changes what they walk away with. Who keeps their jobs, and whether the culture that they actually built actually survives them. And then the timing is what affects the value. Everyone focuses on this one. Is the market, really hot right now? Timing is the smallest lever of the three. It can move the price, but it can't fix the structure that was never in place. And so that's why it's really important to find out, does the owner want to leave in 3 years, 4 years, 5 years? These are great businesses to get done under an EOT because they can be closed literally within 90 days. That can't be done with an ESOP. This is why I love them so much. But we do want the owners to stay on and obviously run his business. And when he realizes how much of his time he can get back by letting go of the reins and sell it into an employee ownership trust, and see how it affects his employees, because they then get to pick up the baton when they're ready to transition out. So one of the things that I would actually say to your clients is, you decide the outcome before the deal exists. It's not happening during negotiations. It's not when the broker sends the first offer, but while ownership and the choice of structure is still entirely theirs. A seller can negotiate a board seat if he wants to stay longer until the note's repaid, retain influence over how aggressively the company reinvests profits versus paying down the seller note, and then help shape the profit sharing formula itself. It's negotiated into the trust at formation.
Good. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
So I'll just move on to the next slide. This obviously explains how an employee ownership trust actually works. So this presentation isn't about promoting one exit route. It's just about helping owners understand what their choices are before committing to one. I'm not here to sell you an EOT over an ESOP or over an outright sale. My job, and the job of any advisor, is to make sure that the owner understands every option before they've committed to one, not after they've hired a broker, not after they've paid for a valuation built in around the wrong structure, because obviously you don't know what the structure looks like until you start talking to the seller and finding out what he personally wants from this, why he's actually planning on selling the business, whether now or in the future. If they want to sell immediately, it's not actually a fit for an employee ownership trust, but they do need 10 employees. So here's why I'm spending time on the EOT specifically. Most advisors in this room have probably never had a client raise it before, and a lot of you have never had a reason to look into it. So I just want to walk through this just to show you how simple it actually is.
So let's clarify something here, Angela. You're saying this works best when an employer has at least 10 plus employees. Could you and they're not ready to sell right away. Could you talk a little bit about why that's important?
Yeah, because one of the biggest problems, Michael, is I had 400 calls over a 6-month period with buyers, with the sellers and the brokers on a call, and I was acting as the person that was wanting to buy the business. I was working with someone at the time. They had $36 million to spend, and unfortunately, out of 400 deals, I could only make full offers on 3. Now, I did make offers on another 3, but it was at half price, and obviously I did get pulled out by by the brokers for even suggesting, why did you bring us to this call for a $3 million deal and only to offer 1.5? What is this really all about? And then I'd have to explain, that the owner wasn't ready to sell. He had no CRM, no project management system. There's no internal documentation. No one knows what they're doing. And unfortunately, Michael, this is the majority.
Angela, what I'm hearing you say is that at 10 plus employees, they start having some of the other process and procedures in place, not only on the business side, but the people side. So you think you answered that. That was very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Step one, the owner sells the shares to the trust, and that's the transfer. So the owner sells a controlling stake of the business to the actual trust itself. And then a payment schedule gets set. The owner gets paid over time, not in one lump sum on day one, which obviously he loses half of his money straight away to the tax man. Uncle Sam's coming for it, whether you like it or not. So if you can transition out over a period of 4 to 5 years, some people want to stay longer. The one that I got closed was he wanted to leave in 7 years, so that allowed even more time for us to get the deal closed, in a better way. But then the trust, it's a legally structured trust, holds the shares for the benefit of the employees, and then the future profits from that business pay down the ownership debt. The business continues to be run as normal with leadership in place. It also allows the owner time to build those systems or to work with a company that can help them build systems so that it is transition ready over time. This is where we start to find the money. And then the employees sharing the upside of the business that they help to build. So the future profits are used to pay the owner over time, and then the employees sharing the long-term success of the business without buying shares directly.
So Angela, one of the things you're saying here that I think is really important is everyone on this call who's fractional at some point, either on sales, marketing, operations, human resources, the financial components, any part of the business that you're a fractional in, anyone who currently has an EOT in place, the fractional is really their best friend because they have a job to do. And the most important part is the people who are part of the BTC and part of this call, when they learn how to collaborate together, they can take those companies who are already EOTs and really supercharge them for the best outcome. I really like this idea.
Yeah, it's amazing, Michael. I remember it was 2 or 3 years ago, maybe even longer now. I don't know if you've heard of a company called Optimax. They were actually going to go into an EOT and then changed their minds and went into an EOT instead. And they've done phenomenal. I don't know if you know this, but there are 22 million millionaires in the US, and thousands of them were actually created through employee ownership. So that's a really important point to mention. Obviously, nobody wants to leave the company once they start to see those kind of bonuses coming in.
Yeah, there's a couple of questions that are coming up. There is no upfront payment, and that is true. The trust holds the note, and it gets paid over time, and so that being the case, one of the things that comes up is what happens if the profits are lower than expected? How does that affect the transaction? Clearly, the profit doesn't get paid back as quickly and it has to be extended over time. But the idea is why you're going to have cycles in every business. And so that's why this is great when they're not ready to sell currently and they're still in the phase of building out a couple of the parts that are not already built out. And so one of the questions is can the trust get an SBA loan? And I think that's really important. As you go to your next slide, Angela, can you kind of talk about some of these things we've just brought up?
Yeah, sure. I just want to say that the number that actually changes the conversation is that an EOT can close in as little as 2 to 3 months. And I'll explain the finance bit in a second, but An ESOP actually takes the better part of a year, sometimes longer, because of all the ERISA compliance and the ongoing costs for the trustee. The amounts of money can be anywhere from $30,000 to $80,000 a year, and that's not the case with an EOT. So you're not losing the cash flow in the business to pay to a trustee. You're working on with an employee ownership trust, which is far more favourable and a lot more friendly towards the balance sheet when you're wanting to keep the money in the business and pay the debt down quicker. So when a client doesn't have 12 months or doesn't want the ongoing cost of an ESOP compliance, this is the option most advisors never bring up, but obviously now you can. Hopefully I've been able to explain enough there, but this is where we come in. It is actually before the brokers. We're not going to catch everybody. Obviously you have to have 10 employees, so anything below that, the majority of those businesses are going to be going straight to a broker to look to get a sale. But Legacy Exit Partners provides independent clarity before the major decisions are actually made, before the brokers, before the legal structuring, before the decisions are locked in. It's about clarity first and everything else follows. And I'll just move on to the next one. It's starting the conversations early and just showing them how they can keep more of what they built. EOTs will allow your client to stay in control a lot longer. Just to bring up one of the points that you mentioned earlier, Michael, we know that businesses don't always have a hunky-dory time and things can go wrong and profits can decline. But as long as we can see, the last 3 or 4 years financials and see that they're cash flowing really well, and we'll probably see some of the hiccups in between. Changes can be made. So at the end of each year, the business is looked at again, it's reassessed with the trustee. Lawyer may want to be on the call, but doesn't always have to be the case. But if the revenue does actually start to drop and the profits are dropping, then it can be rejigged without the interference from, all the other moving parts that you have with an ESOP. It does not come with an EOT. It can be handled and dealt with far more easily with just 2 or 3 people rather than a full team of between 6 to 10 people. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thanks.
You're welcome. So as it says at the end there, every exit tells a story. Yours starts long before the sale. And that story is get all your ducks in a row. Don't leave money on the table. Make sure you have a CRM, project management system. You start working internally with your team. The reason I love the employee ownerships is because you're not sharing your financials with everybody there out in the open, whether it's private equity or other buyers, and you're not sitting on the edge of your seat wondering if your competition's actually also seeing those numbers.
Well, a question came up here, I think is really interesting from Gia, and she was really talking about, when we're looking about this foundation this common foundation that's overlooked, is it structure, is it control? And she was wondering if the knowledge gap owners is understanding the real significance of owning, the transaction. Or owning the transition, and where they are in that process. Can you talk about that?
Yeah.
And the other part,
absolutely.
is it about keeping the vision strong, or is it creating the structure to hold that vision strong throughout that negotiation?
It's actually a little bit of both, because you're always going to need the business owner to make sure that he gets the business to be transition ready into the hands of the employees. The type of business that this fits best for are those business owners that they've got a great culture, they love their people, they know that they're going to have to sell at some point, they don't want that business dismantled, and they know their people really well, that may know what they're doing, but because of that lack of communication, sometimes that's where businesses start to lose money. and they start leaving money on the table because maybe there is a lack of communication. I think John Kuzniak's on this call as well. He actually helps people as well with the sales side and seeing gaps. You've got Ted Frangos who can come in there and explain, where your business is leaking money. And then the owner will work with the trustee and his accountant or CPA. They can work together as a team, and that allows them to do a little bit of tweaking on the structure if it needs to be. And that way they still retain influence over how that business transitions and moves forward.
So, Angela, we're going to open this up here in a second so that we can have a joint dialogue with everyone who's here. But before we do that, you had mentioned that you had some handouts or some other slides. Do you have anything else
Yes.
do you have anything else you'd like to share? And clearly, the reason your name is up there, if people want any of this, if they will reach out to you, that you can share all of this with them. But I know you have a couple slides that I saw as I was getting educated about this, that I think people here, if they really want to be prepared, they need to get in touch with you so that they can have some of these handouts to then start some of these conversations with people. If you'll go ahead and go through those before
Yeah,
we open this up.
absolutely. Absolutely, Michael. So there are some points that I didn't cover in this slide deck, basically because I've got lots of information that I can hand out. If you're really interested in helping your client understand, how he can keep his business within his own team, and wants to transition over a period of time to make sure it doesn't fall apart. He wants to leave a legacy and do all the right things by his employees because they've been helping him build the business over time. There's lots of reasons, but I'll just go into these very quickly. Those are the 5 reasons that owners actually choose an EOT. As I said before, it keeps it private. Nobody else gets to see the numbers, and I can hand these out. But this is for those of you who actually want to learn more about employee ownership trusts and how they work. And I can give you all of this information that I've put together. This is the thing that I shared earlier on one of the slides. And just to give you an idea, this is what it looks like. These are all the pros and the cons of getting involved in all of these different types of transactions as well. There's 12, 13 of those. And then this will give you some idea of percentages of, the failure rate versus success rate, and how most owners do actually sell without a plan and what the cost is to that. So I can hand these out for you. If you're interested, all you need to do is just reach out to me. We can get on a call, have a conversation. It is a complimentary call. And then if you've got any further questions, just ask me whatever you want.
Yeah, a couple of people are asking for this, and these are not going to be sent out. You need to go to Angela directly. And so if you'll leave this slide up, and Robert, if you could unmute people so that they could join us, and let's see what kind of questions we may have here. I'm sure we've covered a number of points here, and I've spent a couple hours with Angela going through this, so I have a better understanding. If this is the first time seeing this information, it may not be as clear yet. Does anyone have any questions? Feel free to unmute yourself here, and let's go ahead and ask the questions.
So I don't mind kicking it off if no one else does, and everyone
Robert,
else
thank you
should
so
be able
much.
to just unmute themselves, so you have permission to do that. So Angela, if I am kind of oversimplifying this, it seems almost like an EOT is the ability to do seller financing, but the buyer is in the beginning yourself. So you don't have to worry about a buyer messing up the business. And then over time, you phase operations more and more to your team. And then once you've kind of paid yourself out, you start shifting ownership to them. Is that kind of the process?
Absolutely, Robert. You're actually selling the business to the trust. So on the day of closing, the owner will get 20% of the value of his business straight away.
Oh, really? Okay, so that
Um,
was another question I had. I think I started typing and then didn't write it down. Is there some sort of a financing component? I'm guessing not SBA, but some other financing component that funds the trust so that then there is an upfront payment and the rest is paid over time?
So I've got a couple of really good friends who are bankers. I met them years ago. I spoke to them both last year about EOTs. Neither of them, they said, "Don't you mean an ESOP?" I said, "No, this is an EOT. Never heard of the Manj. Can you explain it to me?" They were actually quite excited at the idea of them still being able to be involved at that 20% upfront portion. It would actually, they would work out a percentage that would not scare them. I mean, obviously, doing an ESOP, they do give preference to low interest rates for the guys that do an ESOP. But now that they've learned about EOTs and what they can do and how they can stay in business, no bank wants to lose money. We know that. So they're interested in learning more about them, which obviously I'm helping them with. You've also got family offices. They love the idea of being able to keep those communities together. Because obviously, if you sell to private equity, we already know that jobs are going to get cut. Their job is to make sure that they're giving good returns to the investors, and that can be done at any cost, including bankruptcy. I don't need to tell you what happened to Sears. I don't need to tell you what happened to Toys R Us and various other companies. This is what really it destroys companies. And the idea of the employee ownership trust is to keep those businesses, especially the really good cash flowing businesses that have, they could go a long way with that business. Maybe technologies change things and the 70-something-year-old owners thinking, I can't cope with all of this tech. All I want to do is run my business and I'm getting hit by all these things. But then he's got a younger team that are able to understand and run with that and help grow the business.
Awesome. This has been really good, Angela. Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions? I'd really like to hear from some of the people who are new to a BTC call. This is your chance to really ask the question from your perspective and figure out how your fractional silo could be part of this and hear from direct from the horse's mouth, if you will. Anyone here have a question?
Angela, I mean, my question would be, what is the typical size of company that you've seen use this structure?
And who is this?
Mark Lowe from 4K1 Capital.
And Angela, if you want to stop sharing your screen, we can then have everyone be more visible again.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that's awesome. So, sorry, what was your question again, Mark?
Yeah, I was just wondering what's the typical size of company that you've seen enter this kind of structure? Is there a limit, minimum size? Is there a maximum size? Is there a sweet spot?
First of all, it depends on the industry and obviously the kind of margins that they're making, because we have to make sure that they're good cash flowing businesses. So, for example, a business that's making 20%, if he's doing 1.5 to 2 million in revenues, and his profits are around about the 20% mark, maybe creeping up to 380 to 400K net, then they would make a really good, business to go into an EOT. Anything up to from that 2 million mark, if they're doing, let's say they're a technology company, we already know that their margins are like 60, 70%. So because they're so good at cash flowing, then they may not have to be making a lot more in revenues because they're making a higher margin. But if they're clearing somewhere between 380 to 400K net profit, and the owner's able to take his salary out in addition to that, then that's a pretty good business to be getting involved in an EOT. And
what's the top line in terms? Is it 500 million? Is it 50 million? Where are you seeing the EOTs go up to?
Yeah, well, the ones that I'm already aware of are the ones that I've been involved in are up to 20 million, but $50 million deals can be done this way. $100 million business could be done this way. But the bigger the business, the more you have to start thinking about not just an EOT, but an ESOP as well. So with an ESOP, obviously you've got more tax advantages than you have with an EOT. But as I say, it can take up to a year to close, and the more hands there are in the pot, you've also got to ask yourself, well, what are those tax savings really? If I have to pay up to $80,000 every year for a trustee to come in, and that money is going to be leaving my balance sheet every year when I could have actually been leaving it in the pot to pay down the debt, then you've got to ask yourself those questions. Is it really worth it for me to do an ESOP? Like I said before, Optimax was going to do an ESOP. Several years later, they actually closed on an EOT. They started with 20 employees. They now have around 250 employees. They're making hundreds of millions of dollars. And obviously the employees do not want to leave that company. And they are so happy that they chose an EOT over an ESOP, having seen the differences because they're not under ERISA and US DOL. So I don't know if that answers your question, Mark.
It does. I mean, so it sounds like this tax treatment for the income is similar to the ESOP. Is that correct?
It's not the same. There is a better advantage with taxes with an ESOP. Okay. But having said that, you've got to think about the ongoing costs of an ESOP.
Right.
Those ongoing costs are not the same with an EOT. They could be as little as $3,000. There may even be no cost at all. It depends on the size of the business. It depends on how it's been structured. It depends on the margins. It depends on what the owner's already agreed to, the time frame of which he wants to come out of that business. There's so many variations that the owner is going to get to find out more once he decides that he wants to go into an EOT. And one thing that I will say, Mark, I'm not here to take clients away from your own process. I'm here to help you serve your clients better. We already know that 80% of businesses that go to market never actually sell. So my goal is to be the person that you call before that actually happens and not after. I will do up to a 45-minute call with anyone that wants to come over and have a chat with me just to see if it's even viable. And then I'll give you an idea of what that business looks like. Obviously, you yourself, if you're doing the books and you understand their finance, you're going to have a pretty good grasp on whether or not an EOT would be a good way for them to go. If they want to be out immediately, then that's a tough one. It doesn't fit really for an employee.
Thank you. That's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you
So
for
what's
asking
the
that question.
shortest time frame you could do this in? A year?
With an EOT, it can be closed in as little as 90 days.
Closed, but then
Well,
they're
preparing it, I mean, in preparation?
Yeah, so the owner would get his 20% once he's decided he wants to go into an EOT whilst we're working on the structure. And then after he's got his 20%, he stays in the business for however long it takes for the cash flow to be able to pay down the debt.
I'm just wondering how we start to have conversation. We're trying to find a way to have conversations today with every business owner we've got and look at the options that they've got. So adding what you've added is incredible. And I sort of vaguely might have heard of the term, but until we spoke this weekend, I really didn't understand the concept, and you did a great job. But all these guys need and we had a wonderful conversation during our breakout groups. All our owners just need, everybody's out there. We need to get them to start thinking about the one crucial fact that one day they will leave their business. That's one of the rules on the planet Earth. We have to leave, and if you prepare, and I love one of your lines was what something about not planning is your most expensive business decision, which is beautiful. So I might borrow
Absolutely.
that some, but also lend people your way as well in when I use that. But thank you.
We have another
Thank you,
question here from
Brian.
Parker Grieving. Are you could you unmute yourself and ask your question, please, Parker?
And we also have Orshi with a hand up.
Oh,
So
Orshi
I
has
was
her hand.
just
I'm sorry,
going.
Orshi.
I was just
You
going
have
to
your hand up
comment.
first.